Good morning and welcome to Veronica Live. It's our Unplugged show. And of course, we're thriving. We have a huge guest lineup today. And I've got statesman John Salek here with me. And our first guest that will be joining us this morning is Victor Avila. He's a candidate for Congress from the District 23 in Texas. So we can't wait to hear and talk to him about the border and what he's been up to. And he's actually in New York City this morning. So we're going to talk to him and see what he's learning about the migrant crisis. And then after Victor's going to join us, we've got Scott McKay. He's written a really excellent book called Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. So we'll hear about how Obama's still part of this nightmare that we're dealing with in 2024. Then we'll be joined by Andy Husar. He's a candidate for Bay County Sheriff, and we'll see why he wants to run and be our next sheriff. And then we'll close it out with Shawn Wilson. He's from Mayhem Solutions Group, and he's got a lot to say. He lives in Arizona. He's working border issues, and he's always fighting the fight to keep America safe. So good morning, John. How's it going?
It's going great. Little rain and cold up here at the farm in Georgia.
Yeah.
So, hopefully going to head back to Florida and enjoy the sunshine for a couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, we'll get you back here. But we'll have plenty to talk about this morning. And when we come back, we'll kick it off with our congressional candidate, Victor Avila. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with our first guest this morning. His name is Victor Avila, and he is running to be your next congressman in District 23 in Texas. And wow, Victor, you've got a lot going on in that state, so welcome to Veronica Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Victor, tell us a little bit about your background, because you've kind of worked the law enforcement scene and what you've been doing the last few years in the great state of Texas.
Absolutely. I'm a retired special agent with Homeland Security Investigations under ICE. But I've also worked at different levels of the government, at the county level, state level, obviously the federal level, and international level as a U.S. diplomat in Mexico and in Europe. And so I bring a vast experience and broad experience, especially when it comes to our foreign policy, national security, and everything that affects our border security, which is my expertise. I'm also a subject matter expert in human trafficking investigations, which I did a lot while in Mexico, rescuing a lot of victims, women and children, and particularly from the sex slave trade of this human trafficking atrocities that continue to happen. But also dealt a lot with the cartels in Mexico, so I'm very well aware of the imminent threat that we face from them. I went through a horrific tragedy in my career while I served in Mexico. My partner and I were ambushed by a cartel, and Special Agent Jaime Zapata was tragically killed in the line of duty next to me. I survived being shot 3 times, and so
oh my goodness.
I'm here by the grace of God, and a lot of this thing that I'm trying to do, especially in this district in Texas, which, by the way, Texas 23 covers most of the border in Texas from San Antonio all the way to El Paso, and basically ground zero with what's happening at the border. And it's personal. It's also personal to me because I've seen the direction that we have, that this administration, I'm talking about the Biden administration, has taken us in the last 3 years, which is sometimes incomprehensible to me, how this has continued to happen. And not just illegal immigration. Obviously, we could talk about the numbers of illegal aliens coming into this country, but it's the public safety threat and national security threat and everything else that affects us throughout the country, by the way, not just in Texas. Happen to be in New York right now, and how they're being affected in Chicago and Maryland and Denver, and you can name almost any state now, and they've become a border state. They are now feeling the ripple effects at their healthcare systems, their criminal justice systems, and even their school systems.
Well, Victor, this week it came out that the number one issue for American voters is the border. And we've had millions of people come over. Fentanyl is a huge thing, plus all the crime, not only in Texas, but I know when we did talk yesterday, you said you were in New York City trying to see what's happening when these migrants run up there. I mean, or land in New York City after they take a bus or plane to get up there. I mean, I'm very, very concerned for Americans. how can we stop this? I ask people that are working in Texas and running for office and are in office, how do we stop this crisis?
Well, it's easy, actually, believe it or not. The initial stoppage of it would be very easy because people need to understand that the only thing that changed here was the ideology of this administration, and it's all has to do with policy, and it has to do with the stroke of a pen. It has nothing to do with legislation. It had nothing to do with Congress. They continue to blame Congress for whatever reason because they will not accept responsibility for what they have created. This is a chaos that they created. It's deliberate. Have no doubt about that. They removed a lot of the procedures and policies that were in place that were working. I tell you because we saw it. I've done this for 20 years, and they have purposely just undid all of that. And so what happened is the message went out to the world. Not forget Mexico and Central America for a second here. It's the world that is coming over because now they're realizing, wait a minute, not only am I going to be allowed to come into the U.S., they're going to take care of me. They're going to give me shelter. They're going to give me health care. They're going to give me education, even possibly a job. But the big difference I want people to understand is the people coming now have a different view, a different ideology. They're coming with some sense of entitlement than even when the ones that I used to arrest back in the day, more of the migrant or economic migrant that I would refer to as now. Most of these individuals, first of all, are single adult military age males. They don't want to assimilate to the United States. They don't want to be Americans like my parents did. My parents came to this country legally, but they assimilated. And assimilation means adopting the laws, following the Constitution, not being a public charge to the government, and working very, very hard for their family. That's not what we're seeing here now. These people want to be taken care of. They'll fly their flag of their country, and we can't have it both ways. And we're at the breaking point. I think actually we're beyond the breaking point because these people, whether you like it or not, have to somehow be absorbed. They're here. They're human beings. The weather is super cold out here in New York, and they're going into the subways. They're going into shelters. There's just no hotels. There's just no more capacity. Well, guess what? We've been feeling that in Texas with the overcapacity for years, and now all these other cities are feeling it. But you brought something up very, very important, and that's crime. I'm the first one to tell you, not everyone that comes across is committing crimes, but we have a tremendously large amount of people committing crimes, property crimes, burglaries, even violent crimes. Just yesterday, there was a little girl that was raped by a Guatemalan national, and these cases continue to happen on a daily basis. Listen, we have enough crime in our country to deal with and a crime surge, and also kind of dealing with the fact that these people are not being prosecuted. There's no accountability. So when you add all that up, you're adding people from 150 different countries committing crimes. And I talk to a lot of police departments around the country, and they tell me, Victor, we can't absorb this, and we don't have more resources. We don't have more police officers. There is no more money in the budget. And so something gives, and you're absolutely right. It's the U.S. citizen that gets affected by public safety, by the fentanyl that continues to pour into this country and kill Americans, the methamphetamine epidemic that a lot of people don't talk about, and other drugs, by the way, are still flowing through that border, cocaine and heroin, making a huge comeback. And no one, not the Republicans, not the Democrats, no one is doing anything about it. And the blame game continues, and here we are, literally watching it happen before our eyes.
Well, I guess what's shocking to me, Victor, is our Congressman Matt Gaetz this week on his Instagram posted a picture of all of these passports from nations all over that people just dump at the border. And I'm very worried about terrorism. We've got crime, but terrorism, that's huge too. So talk about that.
Oh, my goodness. Congressman Matt Gaetz is 100% correct. I've seen those for years. And the reason why they drop them is because they don't want to be identified. Several reasons. One, they don't want to be identified. They provide the information that they want to provide to the Border Patrol when they get processed. And I say process with air quotes. It's not a true vetting process. Second of all, a lot of these individuals have already been granted asylum in other countries. Remember, especially the Venezuelans, a lot of the Venezuelans haven't lived in Venezuela for years. That's the number one question I ask them. I was just there right before Christmas, and I was asking the Venezuelans. They all tell me, "Oh, we're from Venezuela." I said, "Yeah, I know you're from Venezuela, but where have you actually been living the last several years?" And they'll come through and say, "Oh, yeah, actually, I've been living in Peru. I've been living in Ecuador. I've been living in Colombia." And they've established communities there. They've gotten married. They've had children. And all of a sudden, because they heard that the U.S. Government is allowing them in, they sold everything. And so you have these different types of groups coming through Eagle Pass, Texas. You probably have the poorest of the poorest coming through. And then in other parts, like in Arizona, you have the ones that have money, the ones that have sold their belongings. And so what happens? You have these large number of groups that these special interest aliens that we talk about, SIAs, that are linked to terrorism, incorporating themselves into these caravans. They have been in, let me tell you, they've been in Mexico, a lot of them, for a long time. I interviewed them when I worked there, and it was very scary. But the difference back then is we had enforcement, and that enforcement doesn't exist today. And so you're right to be concerned about terrorism, because ISIS, the Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, and you name the group, they have, just like you and I know it, they know it too. And they know that being in Mexico is as good as being in the U.S., and they are using that vulnerability to enter our country. And yes, are they here? Absolutely, they're here in the U.S. And so we've put that in the back burner for some reason. This administration doesn't see the threat. And believe it or not, I think the threat has been even greater with the cartels, because the cartels have spilled over their violence a long time ago, and they've killed 100,000 Americans or more with fentanyl. And I don't remember any other terrorist organization doing that. And so we need to designate the cartels just like ISIS, just like Hamas, just like another terrorist organizations, to be able to use other resources to take them down. So this border security issue, as you can tell, is very vast, is multifaceted. We got illegal immigration, we got terrorism, we got national security, public safety, we have the court system, we have the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations that are making billions of dollars in the movement of these people. And so we have a lot of issues to tackle. Some will be easy, to give the Border Patrol agents their job back and actually let them do their scope of their duties that they were trained to do. That doesn't exist right now, by the way. And so there's a lot of things that we could flip a switch and we'll be able to start changing it, but others will take a little bit longer, because this administration has really done an effort to fundamentally change the fabric of our country with the tremendous amounts of people coming into our neighborhoods.
Victor, this is co-host John Salek. I want to ask you a question about, Kamala Harris, the root cause person, who's supposedly our czar in charge of immigration, finding the root cause of the problem. But the numbers are just overwhelming. 250,000 in a month. And every 3 months, that's equal to one congressional district. And the question I have for you is that there's a root cause. There's something going on behind this. Why is the Democrat Party doing this? Why is Biden doing this? And I heard an interesting theory the other day about that they are using this as a way to replace population in states where they're having outflows. Like, one of the big stories in last year was the outflow from New York and California, the liberal states, into the red states, to Texas and Florida and Georgia and places like that. And of course, that means New York and California lose congressional representation as the population drops. And the theory I heard was a lot of these immigrants are being pushed into New York and California and places like that to make up for this loss, so they can maintain or even push their population numbers when the census is taken, because the census, that's what the thing about U.S. citizens. Trump wanted only U.S. citizens counted in the census, and that if they count all these illegals, that it's going to disproportionately add more population to the blue states. and let them keep their congressional districts, as opposed to the influence, going to Florida and Texas, where the delegations get bigger, because that's where the real American population has actually moved to. What do you think of that theory?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, John, you're spot on. It's all of the above. And so first, let me address the root causes. There is a way to address the root cause, and obviously Kamala Harris has failed to do that because she has no idea what a root cause is. But I know what the root causes are, and we need to shift the burden that has been placed on the United States back on all of these countries. By the way, let's start with Mexico. I have a beef with Mexico. They are a very corrupt country that have allowed and facilitated the movement of all of these people. By the way, other than Mexicans, these people are illegally present in Mexico, and Mexico has done nothing. I work there. They have very strict immigration laws. They have purposely decided, because they're corrupt, to allow the illegals to come through their country and use their country as a springboard to get into ours. So we need to go after Mexico, Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, and you name them, and put the burden back on them. I think the way you do it is economically, by cutting them off with the aid, and also with the trade that we do with a lot of these countries. We need to negotiate a fine, if you will, with all of these people. For example, if we bring bananas from Nicaragua and it's a multi-billion-dollar trade that we do with them, well, maybe we'll subtract $250,000 per illegal alien that they have allowed to come from their country into ours. Africa nations as well. So we need to shift the burden back on that. But you're absolutely correct. I get this question all the time. What is the core issue of the Biden administration doing this? And I told you all of the above. Yes, it's for votes. Yes, it's for population replacement. And yes, it's for representation. They want to control the House of Representatives. By the way, Biden, as soon as he came into office, one of the first things he did is change the census rules to not to allow them to count illegal aliens as citizens. And you're right, it will change, and they will redistrict these districts around the country. And it's not just New York and Chicago and Georgia, believe me. It's Denver, Colorado. It's other places you might not think that will do it, but they will do it because the illegals are going everywhere. I personally think that we're just in the last 3 years, we've had at least over 15 million illegals come in, because it's not just the numbers that we're counting that they encountered, but we have known gotaways, meaning individuals that we saw come in, but we're not able to detect. And then we have the unknown gotaways. Something that we haven't even talked about yet is the smuggling. My goodness, the smuggling of human beings into this country right now is at an all-time high. Just last month and a half ago in El Paso, Texas, they discovered 270 stash houses of human beings. The same thing in Laredo, Texas. And so the movement of these people is tremendously undetected. And so I talk to border agents all the time, and they tell me, Victor, for every one that we actually encounter, we could probably assume that there's one that got away. So if we have 7 million, you double that number immediately. And that's why you do see these changes in these cities. Obviously, New York is such a big city that it's easier for them to be absorbed. And even though then they're having a difficult time. But you got Tulsa, Oklahoma. You got Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You got Bozeman, Montana. And all of these towns that I have visited and spoken to the officials there and police departments, and it's very noticeable. Let me tell you, they know that all of a sudden we got these communities of people, and then a lot of them don't want to assimilate. And there's this area in Dallas, Texas called Via Dallas, which has been taken over by mostly illegal alien Venezuelans. And we have another one in Colony Ridge, right outside of Houston, Texas. You probably heard of this place. It's a development for basically illegal aliens to live there from all over the world, and kind of a sanctuary within a sanctuary. And so we have a lot of issues with the population. And I think the Biden administration, the ideology, I think, of course, and they literally hate this country, and they will do whatever they can to undermine the Americans of all types. Believe me, this affects everyone from both sides of the aisle. I talk to people all the time. Fentanyl doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It'll kill you. It'll kill your child. And I spoke at a rally rally for the Lost Voices of Fentanyl a couple of months ago in D.C., and I still had the bias thinking that this was more of a conservative group. No, no. There's a lot of Democrats there that are very upset at this administration for many different levels. Obviously, the fentanyl that's killed their loved one. But the crime, my goodness, there was a 16-year-old cheerleader last month in Texas that was killed by an illegal alien in her bathtub. And these cases happen after day, and no one talks about the victims. No one talks about these angel moms, illegal aliens coming here and committing crimes, DUI, you name it, all across the board. And I say this to people: we need to wake up and do something. Put the pressure at your local level, because if you become a victim of and I pray that you don't, but if you do, it's too late. We're trying to be proactive. I want to be back to being proactive. That's why I'm running for this important position in Congress, because we need to change the way Congress approaches this. By the way, there's a bill that is collecting dust there on the Senate side called H.R. 2 that would end all this at the border. But the Democrats continue to blame the Republicans that we don't do anything about it. Well, the bill's right there. It passed last summer. It's collecting dust, waiting for them to pass it, but they will not pass it because a lot of it obviously is political. It has to do with money for Ukraine, and they have incorporated a lot of other different in there that it makes it very difficult for even some Republicans to pass. But I'm all for Americans first. We need to be able to help our Americans. I'm okay with helping other nations, but we're at the point now where it's okay to be selfish at this point. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our communities. Remember what they tell you at the on the airplane. You need to put on your oxygen mask first in order to help someone else. Well, we've been suffocating it economically, crime, and illegal immigration, and everything else we've been talking about, and we can't go on. This can't happen. And unfortunately, I was just at the border, and let me tell you, to your point, Veronica, what do we do? What do we do?
Yeah.
It's very frustrating right now that they have the control, and it's Border Patrol, it's Texas DPS, it's the National Guard. We're all observing, which kind of is unreal to me. The thousands of people coming up from the river, getting processed and released into our country. By the way, getting on airplanes without any ID. That's one of the first things I'm going to change in Congress.
Try
Oh
that
my
as
gosh.
yeah, regular person. Yeah, Victor, I want to ask you real quick. You know, CD23 is a pretty close split as far as Democrats and Republicans go, and typically, 50% is about a win ratio there. And I gather you're trying to take out Tony Gonzalez, who is a rhino Republican, if there was one around. How does that? What's the outlook for that, and how can people find you and help your campaign?
Yes, Texas 23 actually has now with the redistrict is an R+5, so it's a little bit more conservative. And yes, I am trying to take out Tony Gonzalez. I don't even think he's a rhino. I think he's a full-blown Democrat. And why do I say that?
Okay.
And let me tell you why. It's because of his votes. I tell people the votes. I'm doing the messaging now. A lot of voters are not aware, but he voted for January 6th committee. He voted for same-sex marriage on at the federal level twice. He killed the Border Security Act single-handedly because he called it unchristian. And then they had to move and absorb some of that stuff into H.R. 2. He voted for drag shows in the military. He voted to restrict our gun rights and for red flag laws, which is a huge no-no at least in Texas for sure.
Well,
and so
Florida
this guy is
too.
continuing to vote with these huge votes on the left. Yeah, on the left.
Wow.
And people are very upset. Let me tell you, they're angry at him. And I think we have an incredible opportunity to take him out and give the people back the power, which I don't want the power. I just want the job. I recognize my role as an employee of the government, like I've been all my life. I'm the public servant. The people are the ones that matter here. They will dictate to me what I do in Washington, not anyone else. And you could visit VictorAvilaForCongress.com and support me there, because we're right around the corner from the primary on March 5th.
Well, Victor, you're
Hey, maybe we get our
amazing. I
buddy
hope
Alan
you
West to
take
come
it.
help you out.
Yes, but what I wanted to ask you, final question, is you're on the front lines now in New York City, trying to see what's happening when these people land up there. What have you been able to garner from being there on the New York City front lines?
So they're moving them. They're moving them. They're still using the hotels. A lot of them after 7 p.m. start incorporating themselves into the subway system. So even the locals do not get addicted, do not use it. I happen to be here with my family as well. They say during the day, and even yesterday during the day, there was an attack on the subway system. So the crime here is. So you have to kind of put it in perspective, right? You come if you come as a tourist and you kind of block everything, you might not be aware of what's going on. But obviously, I come with different eyes and a different mentality here to
Correct.
see what's going on. And all you have to do is pay a little bit of attention. And oh my God, it is very, very noticeable. If you pay, and I tell people this all the time, not just in New York, in your own town, just be a little bit aware. Just be a little bit conscious of what's happening in your community, and you'll be amazed of what you'll find out. Go to your local city council meeting. Go to your county commissioners meeting. Go to a school board meeting. I'm a big advocate for local politics. I know I'm running for Congress, but let me tell you, it starts at your local level. Get involved. Do you even know who represents you? Do you even know who to call? Have you ever had a cup of coffee with your city rep? We have to mobilize. We have to hold them accountable. They're there. They work for us, and I think we're going to change this in November. And that's where my hope comes in, my optimism. I told you my story, and I've been through rough times, and I know that with perseverance and obviously I'm a believer in God, and we can change this, but we do need the help of Americans to step up and say, you know what, I can make a part. You could do it many ways. You could do it by donating. You could do it by volunteering. You could do it by making phone calls, by emailing. You can do something about it. And but in numbers, you know, the left, I think, is a smaller part of the population, but they make a lot of noise. Us conservatives need to really get a lot louder.
Well, Victor, we are Team Victor. God bless you. And to find out more about Victor Avila for Congress.com. And I can't wait till you win it, Victor. We'll be calling. God bless you. And keep up the fight.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks
All right. Well, we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with Scott McKay, and he has written a brilliant book called Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. And oh my goodness, the book is amazing. So, Scott, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about what you normally do besides being an amazing, best-selling author here.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to be talking with you. I'm kind of one of these weird people who kind of bounced around and did a bunch of jobs, and then finally found my calling as sort of a writer and political commentator. Largely because every interaction I had with the government in my 20s and 30s was negative, and it was like, these guys are out to get me. And so I started a conservative blog called The Hayride here in Louisiana back in like late 2009, and have been doing it ever since. And in 2012, I started writing a column at the American Spectator, which has been a lot of fun because the Spectator was actually the first magazine I subscribed to when I was in college. And then next thing I knew, I was writing for it, I guess, all those years later. But
fabulous.
And then I've written a few novels, and I've written a couple political books. The first one was the Revivalist Manifesto, which I did in 2022, and it sold a little, and then it kind of came back to prominence after Mike Johnson became Speaker. Johnson actually wrote the foreword for the book, and
fantastic.
CNN decided to use it as a vehicle to attack Johnson back in like early December. And it went from it was selling a little to shooting up to the #1 spot on Amazon's comparative politics chart for like a week.
Excellent.
which, made me some money. Yeah. So like everybody else hates CNN, and I'm like, well, I don't hate them that much. And I'm really hoping that they'll discover. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, who knew you're such a troublemaker?
Oh, well, people have known I'm a troublemaker for a long time. But what I'm hoping is that CNN will discover Racism, Revenge, and Ruin and do a hit piece about that book. Because they'll hate it way more than they hated the Revivalist Manifesto.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No. Well, it's Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, and it's all about Obama. And Obama, reading your book is just such a dirty word, and he's still so involved in all of this nightmare. And normal people don't know this, Scott. So talk about your book and all of these Obama-isms that. I was reading all these stories again, and I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot about that. Because we forget. And we're plugged in, and we forget.
Well, the thing about it is, a lot of people, and the book has a lot of history in it. It's not a history book, okay, because all of this stuff is still going on. And in fact, it's metastasized from when Obama was president. Whether it's the DEI thing, whether it's hollowing out the military, whether it's destroying the civil society, the war on faith, the war on cops, like all of these things really got started when Obama became president. And of course, this administration, this, Obama redux thing that we have going on with Joe Biden, who everybody knows is not running the country. This is like the turbocharged Obama administration, with a different face on it. And he's the first president in the history of the country to choose to live in Washington, D.C. after he's supposedly done. Right? He goes and buys a mansion in Calorama, like a few blocks from the White House. And, you could make the argument he ran a shadow government when Trump was in office. And, whether it was the Russia hoax or at the very end of it, Jake Sullivan was like Obama's, his policy director, or I can't remember exactly what his title was, but he's an Obama guy, and he goes and organizes these 51 intelligence community spooks to lie and say that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation.
It's so disgusting.
Which essentially, that rigged the 2020 election. And of course, there were other things that rigged it as well. But, and what you find out when you go back through the history is that rigging elections and not allowing the voters to have a free and fair choice is a hallmark of Obama politics, going all the way back to 1996 when his people invalidated the ballot petitions of everybody else that was running for the Illinois Senate seat that he was going after, including the incumbent, so that he had more or less, an uncontested election. This has gone on in, 2020 or 2004 rather, when he ran for the U.S. Senate. His people got the divorce proceedings released on both his main Democrat opponent and Jack Ryan, who was the Republican nominee. And the Democrat opponent's campaign imploded. Ryan dropped out of the race. And so he went in largely unopposed in 2004 as a U.S. senator. And, so like we have this pattern of weird things that go on when Obama's running for something or when Obama's supporting somebody who's running for something. And so, that's just one of the things that you'll see in the book, which is the ways that our institutions have been corrupted over the last 15 years at a level that had never really been done in American politics or culture or economics in the past. And we're a totally different country than we were back in 2007.
Yeah,
well,
Scott, this is the co-host, John. I was just wondering, one of the things that I've got an excellent book, by the way, and who is Obama's not that smart, okay? Michelle's not that smart. Who are the people behind this? And that's the one thing that I keep looking for. And same thing with Biden. Somebody's running this government, and I know these people think alike. They're all sycophants, so they kind of had the same herd mentality. But there's somebody pulling. Obama wasn't smart enough to go out and disqualify people. Obama wasn't smart enough to pick up the phone and get a judge to open up those records. Who are these people? I mean,
well, Scott, you mentioned in the book that Susan Rice, that Grinnell had mentioned, and we've had Ambassador Grinnell on the show here recently. He's a regular. That Susan Rice is the shadow president, and you mentioned that in the book. So is that who it is?
Yeah, I think Susan Rice plays a very large role in this. I think when the Obamas were in the White House, there's no question Valerie Jarrett played a very large role in, making decisions and maybe even telling Barack what to do. I think that there's a money component to this. Everybody talks about George Soros, but there's an entire network of, left-wing finance that has made an enormous difference in this country. And I think those guys backed Obama, and that was what changed the Democrat Party from being a Clinton party to a, hard left Obama party. So I think that there is sort of a corporate Barack Obama that, includes a number of people who have input. And I really don't think there's some grand conspiracy. Like you said, these people all agree with each other on everything. And it's not that Obama is so much that he's a smart guy. It's that he was really well trained. You can go all the way back. The book goes to a level of detail that will make your jaw drop on, who really raised Obama and who really implanted all of these ideas in his head is a guy named Frank Marshall Davis. This guy was a communist newspaper editor from Chicago, who one of the most anti-American slime balls that has ever lived. He was a Stalinist in the 40s and 50s. He was on the FBI's security index list because after he'd been run out of Chicago and moved to Honolulu, they found him photographing shorelines all over the Hawaiian Islands. And for no particular good reason, other than, you send those pictures to the Russians and the Chinese, and maybe they might want to storm those shorelines if we ever get in a war with them. And so the FBI had him on a list of people that were, go pick this guy up if we ever get in a war with the USSR. And as it turns out, Frank Marshall Davis was affiliated in a way that's not altogether savory with Obama's mother. And when Obama was 10, his mom basically kicked him out of the nest in Indonesia where she was living with this guy or married to this guy and dropped him off in Hawaii with his grandparents, who brought him around to see Frank Marshall Davis, all through his teen years. And there are 22 references to someone named Frank in Dreams from My Father, which was Obama's original autobiography, which, oh, by the way, was ghostwritten by Bill Ayers. And we can talk about him a little bit in a little bit. But there are 22 references to Frank. It doesn't say Frank Marshall Davis, it just says Frank. In the book, those references were scrubbed from the audio book, which was produced, years later when Obama was a political figure with national aspirations. And Frank is this, wise old guy who basically craps all over America over and over and over again in the book. And when you see what Obama did as president, when you see the way he operated and how he addressed things like race and so forth, all of it comes back to things that Frank Marshall Davis wrote in all of those columns for those communist newspapers in Chicago and Honolulu that he wrote for 20 years. And so I'm not going to tell you, there are people who will say Frank Marshall Davis is Obama's biological father. I don't need to go there. What I will say is he's definitely his intellectual and ideological father, which means that this guy represents the Communist Party USA's agenda come to the fore in American politics.
Well, one of the things.
Party, that's for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to ask you, Scott, when he was elected president, I was like, oh my gosh, we're finally going to be done with race, and it's not going to be a problem anymore. And it is the worst it's ever been, ever. I can't take it anymore. And then you talk, I love this, how nobody went to East Palestine when they had the chemical spill because it was a white community. It is the worst ever. And it goes. Well, I mean, your book lays it on his, at his feet that this is because of Obama.
Well, the book does, if I can, toot my own horn a little bit. The book does a really, really good job of pinpointing exactly how this country got baited and switched on race. Because, like Gallup, for example, does every June a survey on race relations in America. And in 2007, we were at the absolute zenith of race relations in this country. I mean, there had never been such good feeling between, black people and white people. And Barack Obama comes along. The Republicans had a very lackluster nominee in John McCain that nobody really wanted to vote for. And so he comes along with this value proposition that, hey, look, I'm a healer and I will make race go away as an issue in this country, right? I mean, he had a lot of high-sounding rhetoric, even though it was very empty based on his background, and folks couldn't wait to buy it because they desperately wanted to get race off the table. And, I mean, as soon as he gets elected, we find out what a lie that was because, you had this case in Philadelphia with the new Black Panthers, right, who were standing outside of a polling place with nightsticks, yelling at old white ladies when they came to vote, about how the black man's taking over and, get out of here, cracker, and all this kind of stuff. It was like the most blatant case of voter intimidation, since the Klan in the 50s. And so the Bush Justice Department gets started prosecuting these guys, but as soon as Eric Holder took over, that whole thing went away. And then you had the Skip Gates incident at Harvard, that ended up with the beer summit Obama said the police acted stupidly, right, and inflamed racial relations then. Then there was Trayvon. Then there was Eric Garner. Then there was Michael Brown. And then there was Alton Sterling. I mean, all of these cases. And in every single one of these, what you had was somebody who is not representative of the black community in America. It was a career criminal, right?
Who mostly and now they're saints.
Right, exactly. These guys victimize mostly black people, okay, and they get made out to be, these innocents, these saints, and of course that metastasizes into George Floyd, which was a very, very useful example for the Democrats in an election year. But all along the way, Obama tore down race relations in this country, using every opportunity he could and used race as a wedge by which he could corrupt institutions and change the country in ways we would have never voted for. And now, racism has gone from a term that applied pretty specifically to offensive behavior toward people of whether they're black or whatever, to even talking about race is now considered a racist thing. And I'll give you an example. You'll probably remember this.
So true.
RFK Jr. Is doing an interview, or I can't remember exactly what the format was, but he was talking about COVID, and he said, okay, there's appear to be genetic markers for how this thing affects people. In other words, like it really, really hits black people hard. It doesn't seem to hit Ashkenazi Jews or people of Chinese descent particularly hard. And he said the implications of this could be like military, which is scary, right? Like that's what he said. From that, because of course he's running against Joe Biden, who represents the Obama machine. From that, he is then lambasted as anti-Semitic for saying this. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, attacks him in this congressional hearing about censorship and, says, you hate Jews. And he's like, I never said anything bad about Jews. All I said was they tended to fare a little better on COVID, which is a fact. And we are so screwed up on race in this country as a result of 15 years of being, constant provocations, that
You're
something
right.
like this, which is utterly absurd, is brought to the table. And they use this. I mean, they are now hammering people who criticize Claudine Gay at Harvard for her nonstop plagiarism, right? Oh, you're a racist. And it's like, well, plagiarism knows no race. Like this lady never wrote a book. She's got virtually no scholarship of her own to justify the position that she holds as the number one academic in America, right? And so you call that out, and because she's black, you're a racist?
I know. It's
that's
disgusting.
A totally different definition than anybody's used to.
Scott, you think, part of it, and I think it was Biden was the one that said, Obama was it clean and articulate?
Right.
Of course,
right.
nobody calls him on that, but kind of looking back in the going back to the early 1900s, there was the eugenics movement, and there were a lot of black elites. And do you think this is a case of black elites versus the common blacks, or the I don't know how you'd want to refer to them otherwise, but it was like, with the eugenics movement, there were black elites that were actually in favor of what Margaret Sanger was trying to do with sterilizing and abortion of poor black women, particularly in the South, and it seems almost like that there's this level of black elite, and Claudine Gay is up there, all of these academics and stuff is where they're hiding at these days. But do you think that's part of what Obama, and particularly Michelle Obama, that's part of their mentality?
Well, I think you've opened up a rich can of worms with that question. There is a long history of that kind of back and forth within the black community, and where it really, I think, came to a head was 120 or so years ago, with the big debate between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Washington was the preeminent black leader in America in, the Gilded Age, between the Civil War and, say, 1910 or so. And his message was, he wrote a book called Up from Slavery, and it was all about exhorting black people to go out and get marketable skills, right? Become the machinists and the farmers and get into the skilled trades and make yourself absolutely invaluable to the economy, and all of this racial stuff is going to start melting away. And his example that he took was, Jewish people, right? Which, who huge on education, develop skills that the economy needs, and they may hate you, but they're going to have to do business with you. And eventually, you can kind of eliminate some of the discrimination against you because you're valuable, and that was his message. And it was somewhat conciliatory toward white people, even though, Washington funded lawsuits on civil rights purposes, all these things. But his whole point was, we're not going to get anywhere if black people and white people are fighting. We need to cooperate. We need to move forward and all that. Du Bois, and by the way, Booker T. Washington was born a slave in Virginia. Okay. So you want to talk about, I guess, ordinary black folks, like he was an ordinary black folks type of person. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first black graduate of Harvard. He came from a fairly wealthy family in Massachusetts, studied in Berlin, where he learned Marxism, of course, and then came back and preached the exact opposite of Washington. He preached the talented 10th at the top of the black community needed to become political activists and seek political power for themselves, and then they would benefit the rest of the black community in America. And Obama was supposed to be the guy who kind of fused those two movements the way Martin Luther King did, except King's message was colorblind America. And Barack Obama's message is the opposite of that. In fact, there's an interview, I think it's from like 2005, when he was a freshly minted U.S. Senator. And I think it's from back in Chicago. And he's asked about this question of, the black community and social mobility and so forth. And he says, there's no such thing as individual salvation here. You can't have individual salvation without collective salvation, which is straight W.E.B. Du Bois. And what it means is the black community has to have, whether it's DEI or some of these other things, to elevate the entire group rather than just, individual families that move ahead and start a family business and do, all of the things that, for example, the Irish have done and the Italians have done and, the Koreans have done in this country. He rejects all that and he says, no, you have to solve systemic racism in order for the black community to rise, which is a very self-serving thing for a politician to say, by the way. And it also doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Well, what do you make
because
of,
you can't.
What do you make of the effort to sell an entire generation of blacks? Education is everything, okay? And they seem willing to condemn generation after generation of blacks to miseducation or poor education in these big cities for the benefit of the unions and a few, elite blacks, particularly the ones that run a lot of these big cities. Why aren't they willing to sacrifice their own race?
Well, I have a thing that I call weaponized governmental failure. And it applies to what urban Democrats do in government. So if you run a city and you fill all the potholes in a timely manner and the schools teach skills that folks need and the cops keep, law and order and, there's a tax climate that's conducive to people doing business and all of the basic things that we think would entail running a city successfully. If you do those things, what you're going to get a lot of is middle-class voters living in your city. And middle-class voters, particularly for a Democrat, are a pain in the butt because they expect you to continue doing those things. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of money or time to practice the kind of corruption that Democrat politicians want to do. And
so true. True.
A few decades ago, these guys started to realize, particularly like in Detroit, for example, when Kwame Kilpatrick, who was a rapacious crook, right? Nobody could beat him. He kept winning re-election every 4 years. And Marion Barry in D.C. and some of these other people who were just abject, horrendously awful mayors, they couldn't lose re-election. And the reason was their misgovernance had run the middle class to the suburbs. And what was left was a thin skim of rich people who don't really care about a left-wing idiot running a city because you can pick up the phone, you drop them a campaign donation, and then you pick up the phone and you can get the pothole fixed on your street, right? They'll do yours.
So true. Yeah, they will.
Right? And then, they send their kids to private school. They got private security in their neighborhoods. You can do like an a la carte government if you're rich in a city. Right? It just costs a little extra, but you have the money. So what? And then there's no middle class or a very small middle class, and then there's this vast swath of poor people that you can essentially, the Human Rights Committee and woke stuff. And basically what you do is you make excuses for bad behavior that leaves people poor, right?
Right.
And that's enough to get them to vote for you.
Well, final question, though.
And these guys never lose elections.
Scott, final question, because you dedicate the book to the America we love and the devout hope she will reclaim herself. And then your final chapter is, please, no fifth term. And Michelle Obama is what everybody keeps talking about. They go high, or what is it? They go low, we go high. I'm petrified that they're going to throw her out there. So wrap up this interview, because when you say Michelle Obama, I run the other way. I don't go. Yeah. I don't.
Right.
I'm like, please, we can't
Yeah.
take it. I think she likes being a billionaire wife and going to Fashion Week and all of that. I don't think she wants to lead our country. So close us out on what you think 2024 is going to bring to America.
Well, I think my editor, Harry Stein, had a really funny thing. He said, every night when Barack finishes up watching whatever NBA game that he's watching, he comes to the bedroom and he says, "Oh, Steph Curry missed that 3-pointer at the end. Hey, are you going to run for president?" Right? Like that's Harry's story about this. He's talking to Michelle. They need her. Like they need her badly because the Joe Biden experiment is really like it's starting to generate very negative returns. Those approval numbers are awful. Those reelect numbers are absolutely awful. But the thing of it is that machine has got to have somebody as a loyal puppet. And their options at this point, if they can't continue with Biden, are Kamala Harris, who's a non-starter. Okay, like that will not work. And I don't care what kind of fixing of an election they want to do, they can't drag her across the finish line. And that leaves Michelle. And I think you're exactly right. Michelle doesn't want it, and furthermore, you can't tell her what to do. And so they're in a little bit of a pickle here. A lot of people are talking about Gavin Newsom, but the thing about Newsom is his ego is bigger than Obama. And he's not going to be a puppet. And look, we talk about this in the book. I mean, we prove it in the book. Okay. The Democrat Party is the Obama Party. All right. You are not going to be that party's nominee this year unless you are a loyal puppet of that regime, period.
So
and Gavin Newsom is way too big of an egomaniac to be somebody else's puppet. So I think all of this about Newsom is him angling to be the guy who picks up the pieces and puts that machine back together, under his own banner in 2028. That's my theory, and I haven't seen anything that really shakes me from it.
Well,
so
Scott,
I think they're stuck with one of those three candidates: Biden, Kamala, and Michelle.
Oh my gosh. Well, we better win in 2024, but the book is Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. It's all about Obama by Scott McKay, and we have to have you back. This has been a wonderful, exciting interview, and the book's outstanding. So please, we got to have you back, Scott.
Thanks. Yeah, anytime, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining Veronica Live. And when we come back, we're going to have Andy Husar. He's candidate for Bay County Sheriff, and we'll be right back. Welcome to Veronica Live, and we are here with candidate for Bay County Sheriff Andy Husar. And Andy, welcome to Veronica Live.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. So tell everybody what you've been up to before deciding to run for this big position here in Bay County.
I recently retired from Bay County after 22 and a half years. My final position with the Sheriff's Office, I was the Emergency Response Director. My main responsibilities was the day-to-day operations of the 911 center and the dispatchers, and also the emergency management portion of the Sheriff's Office for response to any organized events or any natural or human-made disasters.
So obviously you were in the position when Hurricane Michael happened. So tell us about that experience.
That was my introduction to emergency management. I was the law enforcement liaison up at the Emergency Operations Center. So I was the eyes and ears for the sheriff and the agency up in the EOC prior to landfall, during, and after landfall of Hurricane Michael, making sure law enforcement coordination was done, communications were brought back up in different areas of emergency response after the storm.
And tell us, Andy, why you're running for this position now that you're retired. Most people go into retirement and, relax a little. And you want to be our sheriff of Bay County. And why is that?
Leadership is an important thing, especially in today's society with law enforcement. Getting back with the community, teaching the deputies a better way to interact with the community. The 60s and 70s models of law enforcement is way gone. Now, law enforcement is more ingrained with the community, more in touch with the community, more of a helping hand rather than the disciplinarian of the communities. The big thing is, focusing on teaching leadership to the newer and younger deputies so they understand what the main focus is in keeping the community safe.
And what do you think some of the issues we have here in Bay County are?
Well, spring break, which thankfully is not like it used to be back in the early 2000s, but during the summer times and on the weekends, we have an influx of tourists, we have an influx of visitors. The community is growing by leaps and bounds. Every street you go down, you're seeing a new subdivision getting built or a new apartment complex getting built, and need to focus on the community safety, keeping the community like it was 20 years ago, where it's a safe place to be, it's a fun place to be, where people can relax and enjoy their lives and not have to worry about what's going on around them.
So I feel pretty safe always here in Bay County, but what do you think some of our biggest issues are? Because fentanyl is definitely out there, and then people are always talking about human trafficking. And, I have naive people I know that say it doesn't happen here in Panama City. So I wanted to know your thoughts on the drugs and human trafficking here.
The drugs, it starts at the border security. The influx of the heroin, the influx of the fentanyl. Now we've seen cases where they're mixing the fentanyl with heroin, they're mixing fentanyl with cocaine, and that's an extremely dangerous drug on its own, but mixing it with other illicit narcotics, you're seeing an influx and an uptick in overdoses, overdose deaths. You're seeing lives getting ruined by this not new drug, just the reintroduction of these older drugs back into the communities. I've worked special events before where I've seen firsthand the effects of fentanyl. I've seen firsthand where deputies and other law enforcement have dealt with the fentanyl that have had adverse reactions to it, to where now they manufacture special gloves for the law enforcement so they don't get that induced into their systems.
Right.
And his co-host John Salek, I wanted to follow up with you on that comment about changing the policing, modernizing it, or versus what it's been over historically. What we see on the television, a lot of these breakdown in civil society. You have the smash and grabs. I've seen videos of the police driving by while people are shooting at each other, and the police just keep driving on by in these big cities. Is that coming to us? Is that coming to Bay County, or is that just something that's where I guess people just give up in the big cities, on trying to do anything because they can't get the criminals prosecuted? So what's the point of even stopping, if nobody's going to do anything with it?
That I wouldn't say it's definitely coming to Bay County. There are situations, bad guys have cars. They do travel. Back spring break, the college students unfortunately become a target of the criminals. And accountability for law enforcement. A cop driving past somebody shooting at each other, that is completely, irresponsible. It's negligence of their duties. When you swear in as a law enforcement officer, no matter what uniform you wear, you're swearing to protect the community around you. And we need to get back to getting out with the community, getting to know who your community is, getting to know who your community leaders are, talking with them, seeing what their concerns are. Back in the 80s when the COPS program started, getting in those communities that want to see law enforcement come in and help them clean up the bad elements in their areas. Unfortunately, crime is everywhere, no matter where you are, the smallest town or the biggest city. But it's staying ahead of that crime wave and staying proactive with the community and getting out there and just meeting with the leaders of each small community within the county and seeing where their concerns are.
Andy, tell me about human trafficking. Do you think that's a huge problem here in Bay County?
I wouldn't say it's a huge problem. It's a problem. I believe Panama City Beach police made an arrest either yesterday or the day before on somebody for human trafficking. So it's here. It's just not out in the forefront like the bigger cities, but like everything else, it's a crime, and it's going to be in the communities, and we got to keep ahead of it and keep arresting the bad guys for this before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, Andy, as a gun owner, and as a lot of people in Bay County are.
Oh yes.
I'd like to know what's your position on open carry. I've been pushing, our legislative delegation to go there, and there's been a lot of hesitancy, and a lot of it's driven by the Florida sheriffs not wanting to support open carry. I'm just curious where you are on that.
The good thing about open carry, if they're properly trained for their weapon, if someone knows you're armed, they're going to be a little bit more hesitant to do something towards you because they know you're armed. The other good thing about open carry is if you make contact with law enforcement, they obviously know you've got a gun because they can see it in plain sight. And looking at open carry, it's been like that really for the history of hunting in the state of Florida. If you think about it, during hunting season, every contact a Fish and Wildlife officer makes is somebody that's armed. It's an open carry situation.
Well,
I know when I was growing up, it was a long time ago, going to high school and stuff, we had gun racks in the truck, and you go hunting in the morning and that kind of stuff before school. And nobody ever said anything about anybody that had a gun, a student had a gun in their car or their truck, in the parking lot. And I just kind of agree. You can be responsible. It's not this Wild West thing that people seem to make it out to be.
Exactly. And I think one of the best things that the state of Florida did was institute the constitutional carry, where if you're legally allowed to carry a firearm, you can carry a firearm. It's for your own protection.
No, that's great. And one of the things on your Facebook page, Andy Husar for Bay County Sheriff, you talk about this project that you help implement called the Bay County Emergency Alert for Children in Emergency Situations. So talk about that.
County Commissioner Claire Peace came to the sheriff's office wanting some type of an alerting system for the sandy beaches regarding children. You get a child missing on the beach, somebody walks away, a parent turns their head for 2 seconds, and next thing you know, their child is missing on the beach. That program, we could actually put the information in very quickly, and it goes out to everybody's cell phones through the Alert Bay system. It notifies the beach vendors. Commissioner Peace got us the contact numbers for all the condominiums, so the condominium leadership knows that there's a child missing on the beach. It cuts down on the time delay for looking for lost children out on the sand. And that was actually the second program that I put together for the sheriff's office. The first one I call it CARES. It's Child Cares Alerting and Response to Emergency Situations. How that system works is if there's a law enforcement situation, the dispatcher can put the address in that section of the Alert Bay, and it automatically notifies any child care facility within a 1 mile radius of where that law enforcement contact is happening. So the daycare administrators can make the decision whether or not to lock down their facility for the safety of the children. Example, deputies or police are in a foot pursuit. The daycare can lock the doors to make sure the person trying to flee law enforcement doesn't run into the daycare and endanger the small kids.
Great.
Andy, one of the things I'm curious where you are. I see a lot of police departments that have really become militarized in a lot of senses. With the the armored vehicles, the used surplus military stuff and the SWAT teams and all that. Do you think that's an overused or overly aggressive policing tactic, or is that something that just it's because of the way our society is today that we need those capabilities in the police departments?
Well, I wouldn't say the society. I think it's a great tool for specialized teams like SWAT teams. It protects the officers that are getting engaged in a potentially deadly force situation. It cuts down on the deputies having adverse conflicts with someone that's potentially armed. And it's also a show of force. You get an MRAP or you get an armored vehicle show up at the front door of somebody's property that's armed and dangerous, they may consider twice before they do anything worse and surrender peacefully to law enforcement, and it's protecting everybody else involved.
The reason I asked that question was the optics sometimes just do not look right. And there, not long ago, there was a National Guardsman that was arrested for espionage, basically for stealing stuff, and the video was just to me it was appalling, because they had, here's this guy, he's like surrendering, hands on his head and all this kind of stuff. He's standing outside in front of his house in shorts or whatever. And they've got the police driving up with the MRAP and they've got, like 15 guys with guns pointed at him. And it's like, this, I understand the safety of the officers and stuff and all that, but at some point it seems to be overkill. Does it require that, I mean, are the optics for the television cameras, or is it they actually trying to affect arrest of what I would consider a very low threat person?
I don't think it's as much the optics for the news media and the television as much as the overall safety, but that goes into my next platform that I believe in, is the local law enforcement needs to embrace a community interaction, or not oversight committee, but a community review committee, where different persons throughout the community come in and help review use of force situations, body camera situations, pursuits. That way you can get the outside opinion of the community on what needs to be improved on, what was good, what was bad. And those optics you're exactly talking about. Law enforcement shouldn't hide from the community their tactics and what they're doing. It should be a glass house. The community should know everything that's going on within that agency, barring stuff that, is being held for trial. But the community needs to be aware of what's going on, and a community committee to help review those situations and get their opinion on those optics, I think should be in every law enforcement agency. Some of the bigger sheriff's offices in the state have embraced that program, and I think it's a great way to proceed in the future with law enforcement. You're not only getting community interaction, you're getting that community feedback, and you're getting what they're seeing at the end result of the situations that require a review.
I think that's a great program. It sounds like it's just right for, somebody outside looking in saying, hey, maybe you went a little overboard on that situation.
Andy, I've got two red flag questions. One is, what would you do about the beach red flags? Because last year we had record number of drownings and these people aren't getting it. So that's the first red flag question. So we'll ask you about that one.
I think the best thing the county did was enforce the county ordinance for enforcement on that. Not everybody needs to go to jail. Not everybody needs a ticket, but there needs to be the education out there. And that's why the first contact with someone in the water on double red flags is a warning. Any subsequent that day, then it becomes a ticketable issue. Some people, they're gonna push the envelope on what they can do, but double red flag days and rip currents are extremely dangerous, and people need to be aware of them. There's some tourists that come from middle of the United States that have never been exposed to the Gulf, and they need to be aware of the situation. And that's a good program with the double red flags and keep people out of the water. It's for their safety.
Well, it just was horrific last summer. The other Florida red flag law I wanted to talk about, and that was passed because of the horrific 2018 mass shootings at Parkland High School. And police can now, go to a judge and take away people's firearms. So I just wanted your position on that red flag, because, what scares me is if somebody's making something up and then you come and take my weapons and now I'm unarmed. But I do want the wackadoodle not to have arms. So I wanted your thoughts on that.
The risk protection orders have, in my opinion, both good and bad. The good thing is it gives law enforcement the ability to protect the person, protect their family, and protect the people around them if it's done correctly. If the evidence is laid out in front of a judge, and that's the next best part about that is you have to go in front of the judge, and the judge has to sign that order saying to go ahead and seize those firearms from that person. In my opinion, I think it needs to be a little bit different, but it's on the right path with protecting people. Is, the first step is going in front of a judge and explaining the situation and having them make the decision of whether or not there's probable cause to sign that order to go collect the firearms.
Well, are there any issues that we're missing that you want voters to know about you, Andy? Why you should be the next sheriff?
Well, the big thing is transparency. Law enforcement has come a long way. I am a big advocate of body cameras. That way, there's not just evidence, you can see what's going on with those citizens' interactions, whether good or bad. The good thing is supervisors can review the body cameras, they can look at them, and they can address any potential issues with training or the way law enforcement is handling that particular situation. But we need to get back to the basis of getting back with the community, getting out with the community. They are part of us, and seeing what their needs are, what their concerns are, and what they'd like to see addressed. We need to get back to getting back out with that community on a daily basis and seeing what's best overall for Bay County.
And why? Go ahead.
It's the big thing. It starts with transparency. It shouldn't be a secret what goes on in any law enforcement agency. It shouldn't be. The community shouldn't guess of what's going on. The community should be able to know what's going on, what happened, why it happened, and being transparent in everything that's being done. Law enforcement has always been held, per se, to a higher standard. Law enforcement needs to be held to at least the standard that they expect the community to act.
And why? Because it's definitely, Sheriff Tommy Ford's been there a long time and he has a big fan club. Why are you a better candidate than Sheriff Ford?
My passion is with leadership, learning new skills, to the point that I went back and I've received my master's degree in leadership, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in leadership with organizational development and going back to servant leadership. One of my idols when it comes to leadership is the president of the Barry Waymiller Corporation. If you ever get a chance to listen to some things that Bob Chapman does, he wrote a fabulous book on how important leadership is and how important it is. It's got to start at the agency. You've got to have the respect of the people that work for you. They've got to understand where you're coming from. But it needs to be that more of a family atmosphere where they're happy to be there. They're happy to go to work every day. They're happy to go out and help that community. And learning new leadership skills is not only benefit the agency, it's going to benefit the community as a whole.
Excellent. Well, where can people find out information about your campaign, Andy?
Well, right now I've got my Facebook page up, Andy Husar for Bay County Sheriff. And every day I'm going out, I'm going to different businesses. I'm introducing myself to the business leaders. I'm going out and introducing myself to the community. I spend a lot of time in Lynn Haven, speaking with the community in Lynn Haven and the north end of the county. And my phone number is published on the Facebook page. If anybody has a question, I am more than happy to sit down and talk to anybody that wants to know what I'm about, what my visions are, and how I want to make not just the sheriff's office a better place, make Bay County a better community and a safer community.
And when is the primary for this election for everyone listening?
The primary is August 20th. We have to have our qualifications done by May. So right now I'm working on getting my petition signed so I can get on the ballot. I've got to have a little over 1,200 petitions. So I'm working on that. And when I'm handing out the petitions, I'm talking to the people. So if they have any questions, they can ask me, what my opinion is on different topics.
Well, we've been talking with Andy Husar. He's running for Bay County Sheriff. And we'll have you back, Andy. Good luck with the campaign.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with Shawn Wilson, and he is the CEO of Mayhem Solutions Group, which, oh, by the way, I love that word mayhem, Shawn. So welcome to Veronica Live.
Yeah, I think people liked it too much. I had to rebrand it a couple years ago.
So tell us about your background first, because you're the CEO of the Mayhem Solutions Group, and what your mission is.
So I am former military, former law enforcement. I was in the Army. I did 8 years, 6.5 years as a law enforcement officer outside of Washington, D.C. in the suburbs of Prince George's County.
Wow.
Yeah.
A little rough up there,
then,
Prince George's.
Yeah. And it's even rougher now. My daughter still lives there, and she tells me and gives me news updates all the time. After that, I went on to work as a private contractor in the private security realm. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 33 years, protecting a lot of high-profile individuals, foreign dignitaries, foreign diplomats, congressmen, senators, so on, and also did high-profile investigations, working for a company out of D.C. 2015, fast forward, I got tired of Washington and the politics there and decided I needed a change, and I moved to Arizona, where I created my company, Mayhem Solutions Group, which is now MSG, Risk Management and Intelligence. And we've grown exponentially. I went from, a little mom and pop shop out of my office home, and now we have offices all over the United States and people working all over the United States and all over the world. I have offices in Florida, Texas, Arizona, in Dubai. So now we're doing things. We're still concentrating on high-profile security, corporate investigations, criminal investigations, and we're doing intelligence both on the corporate side and for law enforcement and government.
And I know when I talked to you yesterday, you were just coming off the border. So tell me what you have seen firsthand.
Well, back in 2010, when I started with the border, and the way it got started with the border was I was an intelligence major in college. I was a intelligence studies, and I specialized in terrorism, Islamic terrorism, and
Are you there?
I was
okay. Yeah, there.
We're working with Islamic terror. Yes.
No, go ahead. It was breaking up, so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I went to Arizona to write a paper and do some research for my paper to find out what was going on the border with the narcos working with Islamic terrorists to bring people and terrorists into the country. And I was mind blown by what was going on our southwest border. So I made it my mission that when I was done in Washington, I was going to move to Arizona, and I was going to concentrate on the issue of national security on the border. And that's been my focus now since 2016. It is still my focus. Just now there's a more urgent need for it.
And what are you seeing? Because you just came off the border yesterday. And what do Americans need to know, Shawn?
That we do not have control of our border. The cartels control our southwest border. The Border Patrol and the law enforcement agencies do not have a grip on anything that's going on. Texas is doing what they have to and what they can do, and they're doing the best with what they can, but it's still not stopping the bleeding, and we're overrun. I mean, yesterday I only saw Border Patrol out in the remote areas when they were picking up bodies, and that's it. The rest of the time, they're just people walking around the border, and we're talking 25 miles out from any civilized town or port of entry. This is in a very, very remote area of the border, and it was used for fentanyl trafficking and drug trafficking because of its remoteness and the extreme terrain. The cartels utilize this area to bring, hard narcotics into the United States. In Arizona, this is the fentanyl highway coming into the United States. Arizona is responsible for most of the fentanyl coming into the United States. So this area now where they're pushing people was just once a place where they pushed high-value targets or high-valued people that were paying to get into the country undetected, and drugs. But now they're pushing, we call them exotics, and that's people from special interest alien countries like India or China or Russia, or, you know, where they're paying a lot of money to get in the country. We're now seeing that in this area.
So, I mean, you're seeing this firsthand. I'm like mortified. And then you said they're picking up bodies. What are these bodies that they're picking up? People that have just haven't made it, or they've died from fentanyl, or
there's holes in the fence out in that area where they haven't repaired them yet during the construction when Trump built the wall out there. Because at one time there was no wall. There was just a mile and a half of wall east and west of the Sassany port of entry. And that was it. The rest of it was a barbed wire fence, and people can walk and come and do what they want to do. That's why it made a perfect area for drug smuggling and for bringing, you know, special interest aliens across because of the remoteness, and it was completely open. Well, since Trump put the wall in, there's gaps left in the wall. Fresno Mountain, which is the pivot or the midway point from Sassany to Arivaca, all the holes have been repaired in the fence up to Fresno Mountain. Now, east of that mountain, there's still holes in the fence. There's still unfinished fence. So all those people are coming through that area along with drugs and, you know, high-value targets, people that are paying a lot of money to get in, and they want to get in undetected. And it goes like that all the way to Nogales.
wow.
Yeah, Shawn, it's co-host John Salek. I'm just curious what, you know, your specialty, you know, looking at the security aspect of it. I'm just curious, are these high value people that are coming in? I mean, is this like organized terrorist cells that are actually trying to be formed in the United States, and this is the route they're smuggling the people in?
Yeah, so the last 2 days we were out there, the only thing that we saw were middle-aged military men from Africa, from India, from Bangladesh, from the Dominican Republic, from Ecuador. All the Africans that were there, they were there alone. There was no family units. There were no kids. They were just there by themselves, along with the Bangladeshis. They were there also alone without any family, you know, or kids. But yeah, now we never saw these exotics to this extent because they all went through Luke Fu and Yuma before. Now is alarming, but we know why, because the cartel that controls this area now, that's what he did in those areas before, in Yuma and Lukeville. And now that he has control of this plaza all the way up to Nogales, he's doing the same thing he was doing in those other plazas.
So
do we have any level, and they don't ever seem to talk about this, but, you know, are any of the Iranian-based groups, you know, organizing to send people here, you know, the Hamases or Hezbollahs or Islamic Jihads or whoever they are? I mean, are they actually trying to organize to infiltrate people into the United States?
Yeah, of course they are. They're going to exploit this vulnerability that we have on our southwest border. Every bad guy to the United States is utilizing this as a way to get into the United States. And it's been that way for years. I mean, even back after 9/11, people knew that the border was open. They can sneak into the country. And that's, you know, back in 2017, we had a video that I delivered a disk drive to somebody that delivered it to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and it was a Syrian terrorist, a confirmed Syrian terrorist. And they later captured him in Washington, D.C. And so this is not an area that's, you know, new to this. This is something that's been happening for a long time, and they're just exploiting it now to the fullest.
And
well, why do we bother with passport checks and that kind of stuff? You know, I know if I go out of the country and I come back in, you know, flying to New York or Atlanta or whatever, you know, I go through customs, got to show a passport and get inspected and all this kind of stuff. You know, why are they even bothering with that if they don't care anymore?
I don't know. I don't know why people can't just fly on an airplane and come to an airport and then come in that way. This way we're at least documenting through facial recognition and all that stuff that these people are coming in, and we can match them with any databases or biometrics that we've collected over the years of terrorists or anybody else. That would be a safer way to do it. But, we're over 200 people now that they've captured this year. This year has been the worst year, or last year, the 2023, has been the last year, or the worst year for capturing terrorists, over 200. And that's just confirmed. That's what they know, that they've touched them, they put hands on them, and they have a database. They've either matched it with biometrics or fingerprints or something because they were in Guantanamo Bay or they were in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they knew who these guys were. What they don't know is here is even more alarming, because if you take the number of people that are here now, multiply it times 3 or 4, because the border is wide open in areas, and Border Patrol is not patrolling the border. All they're doing is grabbing bodies from the border and taking it to processing and processing what they have. And it's just a repeated cycle. It's a transportation system now for the U.S. government to remove illegals from the border to the processing centers.
So Shawn, you are in this business. You're in the trenches on the front lines. I mean, I'm scared to death, and I don't know how to wake up America. So what do Americans need to know? I mean, because I know when we were talking, you said you've been targeted by the left. So I wanted you to tell us about that. And what can we do as Americans to stop this? I mean, we are being overrun. We don't know who these people are. What can I do? I know 2024, I keep telling all of my friends and acquaintances that we have to take the White House back so that we can secure our border. So tell me what your thoughts are on this.
Well, people are visual creatures, and they want to see it, or it doesn't exist. So that's what we've been trying to do, along with our partners like Jason Jones and Victor Avila and the people from Border 911 and Turning Point USA. I work with all those organizations. I also work with other agencies, state agencies and federal agencies that want to make a difference and try to do this, and we try to pass that information along. But the American public, I mean, the left in this country are just blind, or they're intentionally just denying what's happened to get votes or to get people, to take their side. Because we had a reporter yesterday down on the border, and the facts that she spewed today, she doesn't believe there's armed cartel members on the other. Interviewed the AK-47s. They were beating women and children, forcing them, sticking guns in their faces. You're interviewing me and you're spewing hate about what I'm doing and how I'm exposing the problem. But are you talking to the migrants that you're here surrounded by? Are you asking them questions? Because she spoke perfect Spanish. She could easily have asked some of the Spanish migrants what was going on, and they would tell you, because we have Spanish speakers on our team. And we interview and interrogate migrants when they come across, so we know what's going on, how they're treating the migrants, how they're moving the migrants, what they're paying to get across, because nobody comes across that border without paying. So that's all information that we need to give to policymakers, people making the decisions, people doing the enforcement on the border. And that's the kind of information that we're collecting on many platforms.
Well, that's amazing. We did have Victor on this morning, and I hope he wins, because it's going to take a Victor Avila to clean up this border. So what are we missing, Shawn? Well, you didn't tell me about how the left has targeted you. You were telling me that yesterday.
Oh, yeah. They've since my last visit to the border in Lukeville, they've posted pictures of me being the CEO and saying that I'm a right-wing extremist, I'm anti-government. That's so far from the truth. They try to paint me as a racist. I'm a son of an immigrant. Okay, I want everybody listening right now that has any doubt about who I am and my character is. I'm a son of an immigrant. I was married to an immigrant. I have a biracial daughter and biracial grandchildren. I am far from being a racist. Okay. And I don't want any harm to these immigrants. there's a process to get into the country, and people need to be vetted. We just can't let everybody open the door and say, come on in, because everybody doesn't have good intentions. Not only that, they're spreading diseases. There's other things that are going on that we need to make sure that we're not bringing in this country. We have a population of people that we need to protect that are citizens and non-citizens. So there's a vetting process. And some of these countries of these people claiming amnesty, they're not even cleared for amnesty. They don't qualify for it. So everybody's claiming amnesty, and people are coming from different countries that don't meet the criteria to even claim amnesty. So what are we doing here?
You know, Shawn, that's what you brought up a good point there about the diseases, you know, because we're starting to see diseases that these migrants, these illegal, I'll call them what they are, they're illegal aliens, are bringing in. You know, where tuberculosis is on the rise. They're talking about polio. I mean, stuff that we thought was gone.
Everything. Yep.
And you know, and this stuff is just spreading like wildfire, and particularly in the big cities, because these people are all jammed into small areas and they start infecting each other. And I think we're going to have a public health crisis on top of the security crisis.
Not only that, we're going to have an economic and a financial crisis in this country, and that's the intent of all this. So nobody's asking the hard questions. Why is this happening? All we keep talking about is the people, and the news agencies, all they keep showing is the bodies coming across the border. Who's pushing this? Who's funding this? Where is this coming from? You know, and I can tell you where it's coming from. This is China doing it. China is weaponized immigration, and they are also using drug warfare to destabilize the United States. You know, SOCOM wrote white papers on this very topic, and they've even said that this is what's happening.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your view is. You have a global perspective, and it's not just the United States that's seeing this. Europe is seeing the same kind of migrant invasions. You know, is this a coordinated effort across the world?
Well, it started in Europe after the Arab Spring, after the fall of Egypt and all these other Islamic countries that, you know, I think in Wesley Clark's book, he said there were 7 countries that the United States were going to destabilize. And those countries that, you know, were part of the 7 that destabilized, all those people migrated to Europe. We saw it in Germany. We saw it in Italy. We saw it in London. We saw it all over, even Ireland. This is not something new. This is a coordinated thing. There was a plan for this. And I think they're just continuing in the plan, and now it's going ahead more progressively.
Well, I know as an American, I'm scared, and I think that the election this year is crucial to get our border back, you know, and then I reflect back to 9/11, and I think terrorists are fully coming through the border, and we're not in charge. So, well, any final thoughts, Shawn?
Well, it's not a matter if something's going to happen. It's when something's going to happen, because something is definitely going to happen. We are definitely headed for another 9/11 event. We're already seeing explosives on the border. They're bringing them across into the United States. There's been several cases where they've had IEDs and dangerous weapons and stuff going northbound. If what happened in Israel happened on our U.S. border, the magnitude of that will be 10 times worse, especially in an area like Laredo or El Paso or, you know, any big city or big center where they can come in. El Paso has no border patrol on the border right now. They have nobody to put down there to stop anything. So if you wanted to take a terrorist cell and put them in El Paso and bring them across the border and arm them with explosives and guns, what do you think they can do in the city of El Paso?
Do you think
who's going to stop them?
Do you think it's going to be more of a armed attack, or do you think it's I keep looking at the infrastructure, you know, particularly the electrical grid system, and how easy it is to sabotage that. You know, and there's been some, you know, situations where they've had like major substations that have been, you know, people doing target practice, you know, specifically trying to take the substations out and stuff. Do you think that's a higher likelihood that we'd see an attack in that form?
I think that's an initial attack or something that they would do if they were going to do a coordinated attack on the United States. the first thing I would target is communications and infrastructure.
True.
And then I would make an attack, or I would do multiple faceted, things, infrastructure, physical attacks, a car bomb. I mean, we saw what happened in Albany. These are all indicators that this is the direction that we're headed. They want to destabilize the United States, and what better way to do it with what they're doing right now? And it's working.
So how do you sleep at night, Shawn? And what do we need to, we live here in Florida. John and I are pro-gun. So if anybody invades my home, they're going to have a problem, and I shoot bullseye every time. So what can Americans do to stay safe, I guess, is the next question, because our government's not protecting us.
I was never a prepper until recently, and I'm not even really a prepper. I'm just prepared. I have things that I could sustain myself and my family if I have to, my friends. I have a tight-knit circle of people in my area that if something happens, we'll come together as a community and take care of one another, because you're never going to be able to do it alone. You need to find a tribe, and the tribe needs to protect one another. So if something does happen, whether it be, infrastructure attack or a physical attack, we need to there needs to be unity in your community in order to protect your community. Because if you don't have unity in your community, you're not going to be able to protect it.
So true. Well, it's been a pleasure, Shawn Wilson. He's the CEO of Mayhem Solutions Group. We definitely have to have you back. And if you need me to help translate anything in Spanish or go with you to Dubai, I'm there. So just keep fighting the fight for America, because we need you on the front lines, obviously.
Well, and what we're doing is working. So that's when you ask me how I sleep at night. That's why I sleep at night, because I know I have men standing ready to do violence or whatever on our behalf if we need to. We have people working in the shadows, combating and disrupting this. Just be sure of that. And once President Trump takes office, we'll kick into full gear, and we're going to save this country.
Excellent. Well, God bless you, Shawn. Keep fighting the fight for America.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me on. Anytime you guys need me, let me know.
Awesome. We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live. And now you've got Statesman John and myself. And, well, happy January 6th anniversary day, John. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that, this isn't like, some kind of national holiday. I'm sure the Democrats are going to want to turn it into a national holiday before you know it.
Well, you sent me the day democracy died, and I think the hardest part that I'm upset about are there's still people rotting in jail for knocking down fences and getting 17 years, and so it's horrible. I mean, honestly, I don't think these people were terrorists.
Did you listen to any of Obama's
Freudian slip?
Biden, yeah, Biden's speech yesterday in Valley. He was quoted in Valley Forge. He's actually at Bluebell, Pennsylvania. I know Bluebell, Pennsylvania, because I used to live there.
Okay.
I think he was actually at one of the colleges. If I saw correctly, I think it was actually in the auditorium.
Yes, right.
College I actually went to. So, but listening to him yesterday, and it was like he was proud of the fact that, that 1,400 Americans are rotting in jail, and serving 800 and something years of combined stuff. And it's like, this is, they're all insurrectionists, It's like, well, first off, clown, not one of them was charged with insurrection. Most of them were found guilty of illegal parading.
Well, and going through a door that some cop was holding open for you.
Right.
Capitol cop.
He made it sound like it was some kind of terrorist group, and that Donald Trump sat there in the White House cheering them on and did nothing, and it's like, it was so distorted, and it's like, no wonder these Democrat crazies believe this stuff. It really was seriously.
Well, and then one of the headlines yesterday was, nice save, Jill. First Lady rushed to embrace zoned out Biden, 81, after he finished speech, then went into his trance-like state on stage at the Valley Forge College.
I will give him that he reads the teleprompter very well, and he the faces he was making, the angry Joe came out. You could see the angry Joe, it was just it was horrible watching it. I forced myself to watch it because this is the enemy. I need to know what the enemy's up to, you know.
He's had too much Botox, and he deserves to be in a senior citizen's home relaxing. But the video, Jill races up to rescue him. I mean, the man's just is a mess. He's an absolute mess. But
and what you got yesterday was a preview of how they're going to campaign Biden. He's not going to debate Trump, or if somebody else ends up. First off, I'm even wondering if I don't think Biden's going to end up being the candidate. I honestly think there's going to be a convention move to vote in somebody else.
But who's it going to be? I mean, because we had the author on this morning, Scott McKay, Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, you know, the book on Obama, and I'd forgotten all those stories, and I really think Michelle Obama enjoys being a billionaire wife now. You know, she's the Billionaire Wife Club and gets to go to Fashion Week and have designer clothes, which her style is terrible. She's gone downhill since she left her Jackie O-ism in the White House. So,
I think Michelle Obama and Oprah, you know, they're all in the same class, you know, where it's something like the Democrats' dream. These people are completely unqualified. They have no interest in it, but they think wouldn't it be wonderful to have Oprah, you know, in the White House with, you know, or Michelle with Oprah as the vice president. This is stupid talk, you know, that is just Hollywood glam crap. And has nothing to do with practical. I think
they don't want to work hard. They don't want to work hard because you'd have to work hard because Biden's barely making it. You know what I'm saying? He's like a 4-hour-a-day president, and the world needs a 24/7, 365 pres like Trump was.
Right, and you know, Kamala the Clown Harris, is not of any intellectual quality.
No, and she can't even get it. No, every time they show her, she's a complete disaster.
And the story this week in the newspaper was that they are excluding her from everything. You know, she's not involved in any of the national security discussions whatsoever.
Because she would just cackle, you know.
Yeah, exactly. She contributes nothing. The thing I wanted to ask Scott, and if we have him back on again, I want to ask him, why did they pick? If this was the Obama people that were pushing all of this stuff, why did they pick Kamala the Clown Harris?
I don't know, because as you recall, she was the first one out, and she was so bad. I mean, her kickoff event in California was lovely. There was tons of people around, but then she just crashed and burned. And it's and it's all back to this DEI crap, because she's a black woman. And then we saw this week with Dr. Gay from Harvard, after she's kicked to the curb with her lucrative deal, still gets to be a tenured professor with tons of money. And what does she say? She comes out saying that people don't like me because I'm black and I've gotten death threats. Well, you are the Bud Light of Harvard, lady. They've lost $2 billion in their $50 billion endowment, and she's a disaster. She's a disaster. So why do they keep pushing these people? And, you know, I've seen all these black conservatives on a bunch of talk shows lately, too. And this is an embarrassment, what these people are doing that are on the other side, that always bring up, you know, color. The reason that woman was booted is because now we're finding it's over 60 things she plagiarized, John. 60.
Well, the issue is not academic excellence. It's not scholarship. It's the fact that she belongs to a group. She's part of the in-crowd group. You look at her background, you know, it's sort of like Michelle Obama, you know. Michelle Obama didn't come from the ghetto. She didn't come from a poor thing. This woman, Gay, did not come from a poor family, you know. And she lived, I think she lived in Saudi Arabia or something for some time. Her dad was an engineer. I mean, smart, educated family. Okay, so she didn't come from a poor background, you know. She's not like Clarence Thomas, you know, whose grandfather was a sharecropper and raised him. Okay,
let me read some of her statement. She wrote, "I believe in the people of Harvard because I see in you the possibility and promise of a better future." And then here we go. "These last weeks have helped make clear the work we need to do, John, to build that future, to combat bias and hate in all its forms to create a learning environment in which we respect each other's dignity and treat one another with compassion, and to affirm our enduring commitment to open inquiry and free expression in the pursuit of truth. I mean, she was a liar. And all the narrative this week has been about nobody liked her because she was a black woman. I didn't like her because she was a liar and a cheat, and in a prestigious position that I would love to have. And I don't lie. I don't cheat. And look what this cheat got. And then she can't even step away.
Number one, she is an elitist. Okay. And part of her remarks, was about the people that attacked her, and says, and this is a quote from her, says, these attacks against often start with attacks on education and expertise, because these are the tools that best equip communities to see through propaganda. And it's like, wait a minute, you people have become the propagandist. It's not
a freaking cheat. She needs the scarlet letter that says, I am a cheater. And what happens when people are cheaters? My son was on the honor board at University of Miami, and I know somebody cheated and they were kicked out for an entire semester. It was the first time they were ever caught cheating, John. They were kicked out an entire semester. It was a trivial paper, I'm telling you. So
yeah, but words have meaning, and you notice how they've taken her, what she did. She didn't plagiarize. That's not the word they used. It's like, well, she was given the opportunity to, add some quotations, and it's like, yeah, because she plagiarized.
Well, I sent you that little soundbite. It was two black men. One's a conservative he was in Forbes under 30. I can't think of his name right now. And then it was a black lawyer, and the black lawyer defending her that we all didn't like her because she's black. And that is not, it has nothing to do that she was a woman. It has nothing to do, because if she was a white woman, a white man, a Chinese man, I don't care. She was a cheater, and 60 times at least. So,
and to me, it's the fact is, it's like, okay, if Harvard is supposed to be one of the top. Oh, by the way, the other thing that was curious in her wording, the motto of Harvard is Veritas, means the truth. Okay, and she said people were not accepting my truth. Okay, not the truth, my truth. And that goes to the very core of what this problem is.
Well, and she didn't stand up for.
Right, it's subjective truth. It's not objective truth. They're all about subjective truth, and that's the fallacy that too many people believe. Why it's race. This is why it's racist,
and Harvard has led the trend of what's happening now, because this is breaking news I just got on my phone. New York girls high school basketball game canceled after anti-Semitic slurs hurled at players. And it says this was a flagrant foul. And so one of the people on the other team yelled out, "I support Hamas, you effing Jew." And the team had to be escorted off of the court by security. And this comes from her leading this charge of not handling it at her university. What is wrong with Jewish people? Nothing.
But the fact is, you take that and apply that to a race, and then just say, let's say for black people, that somebody in the crowd starts saying the N-word and all that kind of stuff. Everybody and their brother would be screeching about, oh my God, we have to do something about this. This is unacceptable behavior, and yet when it comes to the Jews and the Palestinians, you can't have that same level of discussion.
No.
Or in their case, it has to raise to the level of actual violent acts before they'll do anything about it, and it's like, the fact is, you're a university, you have a responsibility, you're supposed to be an educational institute, and you're supposed to consider all points of view. And it's like, you shouldn't be letting people out there, threatening. And I remember right after this Palestinian campus crap started, with all these students, they had some Jewish students that were in Claudine Gay's face. And I mean, like 10 inches away from her face, saying this girl was pleading with her. It's like, they want to kill us. Why don't you stop it? And
she doesn't care.
Nothing. Not one
She's
word.
so weak.
That summed up everything you needed to know about what's going on right there.
Well, because they only care about themselves and their paycheck and their title, John. They're not going to fight hard for Jewish people.
Agenda, if it doesn't further their agenda, then they're not interested. And having a fair and balanced discussion is not part of their agenda.
No.
Their agenda is to indoctrinate.
Well, and then the other thing I learned this week, too, was that stupid Harvard, I'm not impressed. They've hired Mayor Lightfoot as one of their professors. So, I mean, they are stupid. I mean, who's going to send their kid to Harvard? That was the thing you grew up in. You dreamed of going, like, I would have loved to have gone to Princeton. I don't know if it's that cool anymore. I'll take my George Mason University.
as Alan Dershowitz said, who was professor emeritus at Harvard, and who, by the way, the Harvard Crimson would not publish, even though he's a professor emeritus at that institution, they would not publish one of his articles because it didn't meet their political agenda. Yeah. And I was shocked, and it's like, but as he pointed out, gay is just the start of the problem. They need a serious institutional restructuring. And I read a piece by a Harvard, I think he was an engineering professor, and he talked about the changes that Gay had put in when she was in charge of the DEI stuff. And she says she basically had turned it into a police institution to police the professor and make sure that they were politically correct and that they towed their line.
Yeah, their line. Well, the funniest thing, I can't remember if I sent it to you or not, but it was on the Babylon Bee, and it said truth or satire, and it said tragic. Hamas loses 2 leaders in one day, and one of them was the Hamas leader that Israel killed, and the other one was Dr. Gay.
Right? Well, the truth is humorous sometimes, right? Or humor is always based in truth.
Yeah, I'm trying to find on LinkedIn because I love Dr. Carol Swain, who's been on our show, and so on LinkedIn she's just been. It was a lot of her stuff that Dr. Gay stole.
Oh yeah, I read. Did you read her piece in the Wall Street Journal? She had an editorial in there. It was just her commentary in there that was just spot on, and she went down line by line. Here's where this woman copied everything I said.
It's
disgusting.
And
no attribution whatsoever. No
but
attribution.
I can't find a screenshot that I did of this woman that was on LinkedIn who was a black woman and has some sort of organization. And it pretty much was a slam that the whole world doesn't like black women. Nobody's ever fighting for black women. Black women don't get ahead. I'm a black woman. And I wanted to throw up. And it was like supporting Dr. Gay. And I'm like, this is, again, nothing to do with you being a black woman. I'm a Hispanic woman, and I work hard, and I'm not cheating off people. That's what it comes down to.
There are plenty of black women out there, to me, that are capable of doing so much stuff, and we've talked to some of them on the air. Was it Kathy Bennett, who is Vivek Ramaswamy's outreach coordinator?
Yeah.
She's a superb black woman. She was running for Senate in Pennsylvania. If I lived I would have voted for her.
Exactly.
It had nothing to do with she was a black woman, but she had a great story, where she was a child of a rape and
the parents rallied around her 11-year-old mother.
Right.
So
to me,
I cried on air that day. Yeah, she was a kick-ass woman. No,
there are just so many of them out there, and it's interesting that we talk about Michelle Obama and Oprah being the savior. Well, it's like Oprah's.
They don't want to work hard now.
Yeah, but Oprah's one of the richest women in the world. Yeah. Okay.
She could do anything she wants. She gets her sheets changed every day, John.
So this crap about black women having, everybody has to overcome some form of adversity. I don't care who you are, Everybody overcomes something to get where
the other story Well, you and I always work hard. I'm a 24/7 person, and the other story that I was
that's how we get ahead. It's not white privilege. It's work privilege.
Work privilege, and I'm type
I work
A.
my ass off.
Yes,
that's
still.
how it is.
At 55, I'm kicking ass every day. That's why I'm tired.
Everybody that's successful that I know that is not gotten there because of affirmative action or some government program has got there because they worked their ass off.
Right, and people they didn't phone it in. Just like you and me, people always come to you and I, and we'll talk about Peter Feynman's race here in a minute because that's been keeping me busy the last 2 weeks. But
you're dealing with the press. The Vivek Ramaswamy story. I don't know if you saw the interview where he put this New York Times reporter in her place, and she kept doing the thing like they did to Trump. 4 years ago, you kept hearing the thing about, well, Trump won't condemn white supremacy, and he did, and they kept playing the tapes back and saying, here's Trump, and he's, his own words, I condemn white supremacy, but it's
and that was in the book with the author Scott McKay. That was in the Trump chapter. It was an interview where the reporter he was only there, John, to get the black comments, that Trump was a white supremacist. Because it's the second to last chapter in the book, Racism, Revenge, and Ruin.
You had this New York Times reporter doing the same trick to Ramaswamy, and he knew what was going on, and he told her he knew what was going on, and he says, I'll tell you what you're going to do. I'm going to give you this answer. So I unconditionally, condemn white supremacy and all forms of racism, period. But you're going to print tomorrow, that I don't condemn it. And guess what? That woman printed, he would not condemn white supremacy.
The interview's outstanding because she asked him in every which way, about Robert E. Lee, it was ridiculous.
It was. But see, it goes back, you and I are political types. And what's the first thing we know about political types? When a reporter calls you, the reporter has already written the story. They're only calling you for confirmation.
Well, it's all about the headline. They want the headline. No, well, it was funny because last week's show we had Ryan's Sweezy on it. It's got that Walk the Talk Foundation fighting the IG, and so some woman that she barely listened to the interview about that you and I, and she thought you were anti-woman, and that I was like a woman in the military that did nothing, and wrote this long little messaging in there. So it was like the first time somebody like didn't like something I said, but I don't think she really listened to the show, and she had to comment how as a lawyer, as a JAG, she jumped out of helicopters. Well, I've flown in fighter jets and helicopters too, darling, in the military. And she didn't like how I said I work for generals. Well, everything I did was on a global tell the Air Force story, and how we're spending these flying assets around the world to kick your ass when we were going to war with Saddam Hussein. That was just like one example. So anyways, I had to laugh. I sent it to you because
I know, but you know me, I like women, but I'm about merit. Okay. I'm in an industry where engineering is the kind of work I do. Okay. Merit is what I care about. I don't care what your race is, what your religion is. I don't care if you're male or female. I want the smartest person. I succeed
and I think when I joined the military, there was only, I think, probably 8% women. So, I blended and I worked hard, and it was merit. All the awards I ever got, a ton of them was merit and delivering. And yes, I always worked for generals who had big global things that they were fighting. When you go to war, it's a global issue, people, and so anyways, it was so funny because it was a woman that attacked me, and then she attacked you, and you and I are fighting always for our country, the military nation, and people that work hard.
But I'm not about the military as a social experiment.
No,
I'm absolutely against that. And it's like the fighter pilots. Okay. When you got your wingman out there, you want to know your wingman is the best, okay? Maybe even better than you.
Well, and that's why I loved working for fighter pilots, because they were the best.
And it's not right, and it's not a matter of, they don't care whether it's a woman or a black person or a Hispanic. That is every bit of that, and this was my experience in the military. Every bit of that was irrelevant. It was, were you a hot stick? Did you know
and
how
do
to
you
fly
have
that
my
airplane?
back?
Right.
You know,
And that's what you need to know, because you need
the
to trust that
military,
person with your life.
right? It's a life or death business. So
Right.
yes, I joke I flew a desk, because I did fly a desk in support of people that were flying airplanes that at any day could die or be shot at, or so this woman had no validity going after you or me. So she needs to listen to the show. Bottom line.
I mean, to me, when I was flying around, it was like, you just accept it. It's like, this is your job. It's a dangerous job. In the blink of an eye, and when I used to fly in P3s, we'd be flying around looking for submarines, we'd fly at 150, 300 feet off the water, at 180 to 200 knots. Just a blink of an eye. And I read the crash reports where just blink of an eye, boom, you're into the water, because you're so low down. You're so low for what
trying
what
to not get
purposes.
detected. Yeah.
Right. And it's a dangerous business, and same thing, look, you come in landing, some idiot student pilot, about to crash you into the ground. Those types of things, you have to deal with it, but you accept the fact that it's a dangerous business and you can get killed, and you're willing to do it even despite that.
Well, anyways, I was unimpressed with her comments, and I didn't join the Marines. I'm not in a foxhole, because you can do global things with a computer, and especially if you're telling your story to the world via TV, radio, social media. So this woman did not get it, but I did want to talk about the. Go ahead, John.
I don't worry about people like that.
No, well, it was just silly. It was so silly.
I learned that in politics. When I got into politics, you have to have a thick skin. People who you never heard of seem to know everything about you.
Right, and they don't know your story. Well, the other story
the first thing about you.
I wanted to talk about was the one you sent me, the military's phantom extremists, because it came out that, that lovely Secretary Austin and General Milley all the last 2 years pushed that narrative that the military's full of white supremacists and extremists. And well, guess what? We are not. And John and I already told you that we weren't. And, so I was glad to see this story, because it was a complete BS narrative, once again, saying that the military is full of extremists. Yes, there's always here and there. They investigated them. But, I love the ending of the
military
story.
Is a cross-section of America.
Yeah.
Isn't that the social experiment? Isn't that what they want? They want the military to reflect the social structure of America, as far as how many minorities you have in this position and all that stuff. I mean, that's always what their social goal is. So, the fact that you get a few crazies in occasionally.
Well, it said that one of the lines it said in the story is that a RAND survey found that among veterans, support for extremist groups and extremist ideals is similar or less than the general public. Because really, we're about taking care of the enemy and supporting the Constitution. But I do love how this op-ed closed. The person wrote, the U.S. military reflects the strengths and weaknesses of American society, but it has a strong culture that keeps men and women from joining the political fringes, uniting members of all races, all creeds in a common purpose, and steeping them in the military's rich tradition of duty, honor, country. That's what it's all about. So,
right.
fake narrative.
I would be the first to say, I would not have tolerated, some crazy, Hitler worshiping extremist, that would never have been tolerated by anybody in my unit. Believe me, it just, we're there for the right reasons. And that's what they get confused, because they don't believe in the right reasons is what the narrative is with these leftists.
Right,
so.
right. Well, but I did want to, the last topic I want to hit is the big, I sent you yesterday because it's still making national news and it's made global news, is that the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida did not want to resign when he was caught up in a sexcapade scandal. And so, the last 2 weeks I've been helping Peter Feynman, who's our Florida National Committee man. He stepped up to to run to be our chairman against our vice chairman, Evan Power, who was running for national committee man. And when all of this happened, he decided to throw his hat in the ring as well before Peter declared to be our chairman. And so it's been very, very interesting because political people are coming out for each of them. And then this morning, right as we were coming on air, somebody sent me this piece about Evan Power, that he's a actual lobbyist and works for David Ramba. And you knew who David Ramba was. I didn't know.
Yeah, well.
So
we tried. There was an effort started to remove him from the Republican Party of Florida back when I was state committee man. And
remove David Ramba?
He worked. Yeah, David Ramba is a member of the Republican Party of Florida, and I think at the time he was a state committee man for Leon County, if I recall correctly. But anyway, what came out was he was a lobbyist for a bunch of Democrat firms that are related to the Democrat Party, and it's like, because his lobbyist business was number one. And lobbyists don't care anything about party. They care about money. Rule number one, remember, rule number one in politics is always follow the money if you want to know the truth. And when it comes to lobbyists, there is no party. The only thing that a lobbyist are allegiant to is money and the people that pay them. And that's the number one thing. So it's like, I wasn't there because, as the state committee man from Bay County, I wasn't there because of the money. It's an unpaid job, okay? It cost me money to hold that position,
right?
For all the travel and everything. I was there for the politics. I was there for because the Republican Party stands for something, and the Democrats. I would never vote for a Democrat. Period. Ever.
Well, it talks about this guy, David Ramba, who I didn't know about until today, and then you knew who he was, that he was a Dem political operative, and I guess he's worked closely with Evan, and it says a conflict of interest for Evan Power, and that's how that David Ramba paragraph.
If I remember, I think Evan actually works for his firm or was a partner with him or something along those lines.
Well, it says that
Tallahassee lobby.
They raised $300,000 to help Democrats statewide. So, I mean, honestly, if you're a lobbyist and you want to do Republican things, I think you have to be in a Republican lobbyist firm. I don't think I'd want to support Dems that want to kill babies at any moment of my life. So this is very eye-opening, and it came from the Citrus Government Watch Committee. I don't know who that is, so we'll have to research who that is. But then the second paragraph, which as a military woman, this one upsets me a lot. It says Powers DUI arrest, and said he was arrested in 2018 after he hit a parked car by an off-duty police officer, and he didn't. After failing a field sobriety test, he was arrested. He refused to do the breathalyzer and was spent the night in jail. And then it says, after 5 years in the court system, this year the charge was reduced from a DUI to reckless driving and finalized a short time ago. And it's all a matter of public record. So that's very upsetting to me because as an adult, that's part of the total package I'm looking for. I don't want womanizers. I don't want people doing threesomes. I don't want people drinking. So
right, you have to have some moral compass.
I mean, you can drink, but you don't ever drive. And in today's world, come on.
What does it tell you about judgment? Okay, that to me, that's what I look at, and I'm all these they're human weaknesses, yes, but I look at it as most of them are failures in judgment. The case with Christian, and I'm friends with Christian. I've known him for a number of years. To me, that was a complete failure in judgment to say, all right, I've got this position in the party. I've got this public exposure. I'm not just representing myself. I'm representing every Republican
you and me.
and
that was the thing yesterday. I sent you the CNN story, and Evan has a soundbite in there saying, you can't be like this as a Republican. Yeah. And then the story talks about now, like Christian, I guess that encounter that the woman said that he was raped or she was raped. He videotaped 2.5 minutes showing that it was consensual, but now he's getting charged with a voyeurism charge. It's instead of the rape charge, but okay, whatever. These are not the right people in the right positions if you can't be the total package and above board.
And I understand, Christian's saying it's like, okay, so he was, I think the rape charge was a put up by Democrat operatives. Okay. That is all to me.
I think definitely stuff. They probably paid that woman.
Right. And so here, that was her initial claim. And then it turns out there's a videotape that
shows it was consensual.
Right. At her house. How do you know somebody's not videotaping you at your own house? It's not like a setup, like they've got cameras all around the place. Obviously, he had his phone in his hand while things were going on.
Yeah.
And she didn't have any clue that he had a phone in his hand. I mean, the whole thing just smacks of setup to me. And
originally that's what everybody was like, Veronica, before we knew any of the details, Veronica, this is the golden shower story again, right. Florida version 1.0.
And that was Matt Gaetz' thing. Matt Gaetz was not willing to jump on the bandwagon because he's been there. He's had the same accusations of people coming, and we've seen it before. Judge Roy Moore up in Alabama, he's running for Senate.
Kavanaugh.
All these women came out, saying, oh, he harassed them or he did something or whatever. And then every bit of it disappeared. Never heard another word about it. And that seems to be the pattern with all this stuff. These women come out of the woodwork, during the campaign, making all these accusations. And then when the candidate's discredited or loses or whatever, it all goes away and you never hear anything. No prosecutions, no settlements, nothing. It just disappears. So you got to wonder how valid, they're just, are the Democrats weaponizing this kind of stuff? And so I understand that. But, the videotape, the video on the camera phone saves him from the rape charge.
Yeah,
thank
God.
Now they get him on something. The government's going to get him on something, because there's probably a Democrat prosecutor down there.
I've said this for years now on air. Why can't I have the total package candidate? I want somebody that has the good. They go to church. They're real morals.
You're dealing with humans, I know we, I got Father Michael coming up here sometime in the future here. And even he says, pray for me. I'm a sinner. You're a priest. No, I'm a sinner. and he's right. None of us are. There's only been one perfect
They're
person,
not even trying to be Jesus, John.
Well,
Come on.
The Beatitudes are really hard. Okay. It's really hard.
I just think there's a lot of conflicts for Evan. I mean, the governor did come out yesterday and support him, but nonstop people have been telling me that, Evan's wife works in the governor's office. There's this lobbyist thing that, now we've seen this. The DUI to me is huge in life because, I've seen too many people that have gotten these things and they have problems, and you should have better judgment in today's world with ride shares. So I don't know. I'm driving up there tomorrow. I'm going to be in the room because I want to see history being made. And that's the other thing. Florida Politics came out with a story, John, and I think I sent it to you, that they're saying that this whole election is rigged because the votes come down to 67 counties, their chairman, state committee woman, state committee man, all have to physically drive to Tallahassee. And then 10 votes from the House, 10 votes from the legislature, they get to participate potentially. And then a Gaetz, a Scott, and a Rubio can vote if they're there, which they're not going to be there. I'm hearing.
Right, they're in Washington doing
so stuff. But the problem is they're rushing this vote. And let's get Christian out. Why the hell he didn't resign? That's another thing that pisses me off. And so let's get him resigned and then to go into the vote. I hope that, a lot of these smart counties, the reason they're saying it's rigged is because this is happening on a Monday. They're supposed to meet in February on a Saturday like they always do. And there's people that in these smaller counties that have real jobs and don't have sick or vacation days to go run. But this is, to me, a critical vote because Florida we have to have our house in order to help win the election in 2024, John.
Well, the thing is that there's an annual meeting. The Republican Party of Florida has 4 meetings a year, okay? They're called quarterly meetings. The annual meeting in January, early February is like the meeting. That is the big meeting because they vote on new rules packages and stuff like that. And it's the only time they ever do it is at the annual meeting. And that's the one everybody tries to go to. So, the fact they're trying to call this meeting and then call the annual meeting still on for the beginning of February. That's not changed. So you still have to go to that meeting too. And by the way, you can't miss. You're only allowed to miss one meeting, I think, and they can toss you out, is what the rules say. Again, this is a volunteer job. Every state committee man, state committee woman, and chairman in the state of Florida for every county, it's a volunteer position. You don't get paid. You don't get reimbursed. You spend your money to be representing the Republicans of your county. So, you got to have some dedication. But as you pointed out, during the week, you got to get off work because everybody's got a job. And then you got to spend money to go to Tallahassee. And if you have to drive far enough, you may have to spend the night in Tallahassee because you don't know how long the meeting's going to take. And,
well, I've learned a lot. I've definitely learned a lot about the chairmanship position too. The other thing, you need to look good on camera. You got to tell the Florida story. But one of the biggest things you have to be able to do, John, is fundraise. You know,
that's what politics, the mother's milk of politics is raising money. And we're kind of the situation parallel to when a few years ago, the same thing. We had a chairman that was like, we needed to get rid of him. The membership voted to get rid of him, and we brought in a new chairman. We brought in John Thrasher, who's current president of Florida State, and he was he came in as a temporary chairman, and that was the first thing he started doing was raising money because the party was basically broke, because the other chairman had messed up and was not raising money and not doing his job. And Thrasher helped us get through a brief period of time, and then we elected a regular chairman, to carry us through the rest of the year. So this is not the first time the party's been through it. This does not raise to the level of an emergency meeting. Okay, the annual meeting, they can take care of this at the annual meeting. They've already stripped him of all his power. Okay. He makes $1 a year and has no authority to do anything.
Well, I'm curious to see because having
go that way for another month.
Yeah, seeing all this, fundraising is what it's all about. So it doesn't matter what your position is.
How much money has Evan raised since this started?
I don't know because we've known. I think this broke. It broke. I learnred about it November 30th. That night is when the story broke. Right. So
he's had a month now, right?
Yeah.
Over a month now. How much money has he raised as the acting chairman? Right. I don't know. So that should be one of the questions being asked. During this meeting on Tuesday. First off, I hope they don't have a quorum. Number one, I hope that enough people don't show up.
So if they don't have a quorum, will they still give their little campaign speeches? I would think they wouldn't.
Nope. They can't have a meeting. You can't conduct business if you don't have a quorum. That's the end of it, period. So hopefully enough people will say, screw this. I'm going to wait until the annual meeting and we'll address this at the annual meeting where we do all of our business every year.
I mean, the problem
wait 3 weeks.
Is Christian. What cojones does he have? The governor asked you to step down, and you've put us in a pickle, and now we're still making national news on a story that shouldn't.
Right. The executive board's already stripped him of all his power. He's effectively not the chairman anymore. Okay. Right. He just hadn't resigned, but they reduced his salary to $1, and he has no authority to do anything. Evan is in charge of doing everything now. So Evan has 100%. He should be out there fundraising. He should be out there bringing in millions of dollars. I want to know from Evan right now, how many millions of dollars have you got committed? You had a month to talk to people. You're a lobbyist. You know where the money's at. How much money have you brought in?
Money's at, John.
Lobbyists know where the money's at, okay? You go to the lobbyist, and back to former chairman, we had one I said Dave Brutner.
I don't know, before my time.
Well, he was a lobbyist that we elected him chairman, but he was a head lobbyist for the Florida Restaurant Association, I believe, and he brought in a ton of money from those folks.
Well, and Evan is, like you said, is a lobbyist. He should know how to bring in money.
He knows where the money is at, right? But remember, the legislative session is going, and where's all the lobbyist money going to? It's going to the pockets of our legislators' PACs. That's where the money's going. Okay, so back to, you want to know the truth in politics? Follow the money. And
Evan has been great on my show, I will say, because he's talked about all the issues. But, I just think right now, I don't know. I think Peter, he's been on the national stage. And then
and that's a critical piece also to kind of bring this to a close, Veronica, is the chairman, the state chairman, the national committee man and the national committee woman. Peter is the current national committee man that has a vote on the Republican National Committee, the RNC. The 50-state committee is made up of 3 people from each state. That's who the Republican National Committee is. And Peter's been doing that for a long time. He knows all those people. And if we go up there with Evan,
the rules and regulation section of the RNC have come out and endorsed him. It's a boatload of people. And then the other group from the RNC that came out and voted for him too was like the faith and freedom contingent of the RNC. It's tons of people, and they're all national level people.
Peter is respected throughout the National Republican Party. I mean, he is the real deal, folks. And that's why we need somebody that's the real deal. He's willing to step in and take the job, and it's a thankless job, I'll tell you that.
And he's been doing politics for 20 years. And to me, this is truly, today, you and I mean, we've had a jam-packed show. Victor Avila, candidate for Congress in Texas, been on the border. He's up in New York seeing where the migrants are landing. Scott McKay, racism, revenge, and ruin author, talked about all the mess that Obama and Biden have done to our country. And then we rounded out with, the local guy, Andy Husar, wants to be the candidate for the sheriff, but for Bay County Sheriff. But finally, the last guest was Shawn Wilson from Mayhem Solutions Group that has been on the border. I talked to him last night as he had just left the border, and it's a mess. So, who are these people coming through the border? We're millions now, John, most ever. And this is what we want America to look like. It's one thing to be a melting pot where you bring engineers in and doctors in and people working hard and, car places, manufacturing cars. We don't know who the hell these people are. And if we don't take back 2024, and you need to have Florida leading the charge, which we were leading the charge until stupid Christian decided to not care about his 3 daughters and do a threesome. Give me a freaking break, John.
That's what I said, Judge.
I'm being vocal. Sorry. Sometimes we have to call out bad behavior, and he's messed up our state right now. And so we've got to have Peter. I'm sorry. I've known Peter for 10 years. I've known Evan along the way as an acquaintance. He's, like I said, he's been great on the show. But Peter was great last week too. We've got to have an adult in the room.
Evan be national committee man. I mean, I really would.
Evan, I'm fine with that.
Evan, run for national committee man, please.
That's what was happening until all this shiza hit the fan. And right now, we've got to have Peter at the helm, and no offense to Evan, I'm with you. He can go be national committee man like he was doing. And that way.
And everybody endorsed him for that, so.
Yeah. Well, I'll be making history in the room Monday, so I'll let you know what happens.
All right.
Because, the story's gone global, and I'm sure it'll go global, whoever wins. But it's one of the most important positions in our state. So, but wonderful show. Next week, I'm taking MLK. You are too to drive your tractor. I'll be in Tampa eating good food. And then we have a packed house for our next show already. I've got Sheriff Tommy Ford's coming. And then actually Father Michael Nixon wants to come on because there's a marriage initiative for the entire county that not just Catholics are trying to save marriages. Everybody's, all the religious leaders in town are trying to save marriages because we have like a 50% divorce rate. And then Stephanie Brown will join us too with her book on devotions and how to, have a great year with God by her side. And I'll there's a couple more people I'm looking at booking as well. So huge show, John.
All right. Always a good one.
All right. Well, God bless
We
and thanks
had
everybody.
the best guest. I mean, it was just dynamite.
It was
Bye-bye,
a
everybody.
stellar show. God bless. Veronica Live is out. See you soon.